All right, we're going to be looking. Good morning. It's kind of cold today, but we're going to be looking at bias today. So let's get started and take some notes on what bias is. So first off, what is bias? Bias means holding opinions about a person or a group that are stereotypical, that are prejudiced, or that are judgmental. And you might have seen that as you were going through um, some of the pieces today. That we typically as human beings hold biases just innately. We have bias. Um, One example might be saying, pigeons are dirtier than you think. They eat trash, they leave their droppings wherever they go. Pigeons also carry diseases. One time I was bitten by a pigeon when I tried to shoo it away. I had to get a shot because the pigeon might have given me a disease. This person seems to have some kind of bias about pigeons, and it might be caused by the fact that uh, he or she was bitten by a pigeon at one point or time. Now, some types of bias that you might find during your research. Political bias, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Republicans are the reason gay marriage laws will not pass. That is a political bias. It might be true in some situations, but there are Democrats that get in the way. There are independents that get in the way. Gender bias. Men take all the good jobs and always make more money than women do. You might have actually done something from the Harvard site earlier that was dealing with gender bias. Uh, Men are better at science and women are better with the language arts is a gender bias. Racial or ethnic bias. Our country has so many economic problems because of all the illegal immigrants from Mexico. Um, that would be a bias towards Mexican Americans or Mexican immigrants or Mexican illegal immigrants, placing the blame for all of the economic problems in America based solely on them. Religious bias. Muslims believe in killing others for eternal reward. There are some that probably do, but in general, is this a stereotype? Yes, it is, and it creates a bias. And we create stereotypes in our everyday lives to put things into perspective, but many of these stereotypes get in the way of finding what the actual truth is in a situation. So you have to guard against that. And age bias. Senior citizens do not know how to drive properly and should not have driver's licenses. And as a young person, you might say yes. Well, then you have an age bias. In the same way, an older person would say, young people don't have any responsibility, and that would be reverse age bias. Now, four types of biases you're going to be looking at, and you really do need to have in your notes. First off, with academic writing, requires you to be unbiased. So your reader doesn't feel offended. You don't want to offend or exclude your reader. That's an ethos. And then you will emerge as a fair and accurate researcher and writer. Again, ethos bias creates a problem with the ethos argument because you seem less than credible. Now, political bias is the first type we're going to look at. Takes a specific side on a political issue. You want to guard against that. Rush Limbaugh, show you an example here. He is an example of political bias. Okay. We'll play this little clip.
Look at me. Ladies and gentlemen, there can be no other way to say this now. The gloves have to come off. It's time for people to sober up. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, is destroying the United States economy.
Wow. That's pretty politically biased, I would say, to put that all on one man and proclaim he's a proclaimed right-wing Republican, uses his talk show to promote his party's platform beliefs. On the same side, we have Keith Olbermann.
Finally, tonight, as promised, a special comment on the attempted assassination of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords of Arizona today. We need to put the guns down. Just as importantly, we need to put the gun metaphors away and permanently. Left, right, middle, politicians and citizens, sane and insane. This morning in Arizona, this age in which this country could accept the, quote, targeting of political opponents and putting bullseyes over their faces and of the dangerous blurring between political rallies and gun shows has ended.
All right, so we have Keith Olbermann, and he's on the same side, or on the opposite side, MSNBC. He was a political commentator known for taking big swings at the Republican Party. Neither one of these gentlemen typically would find themselves somewhere in the middle politically. They would be either on the far right or the far left, attacking the other side. And to use them as a source puts you in a precarious situation when dealing with political bias, because they did have their political biases. Self-promoters also have bias. These are authors of books, websites, or various written works that promote their work not to create truth, but to self-gratification, to promote themselves. An example might be Toyota Today magazine rating its Toyota cars as the best in its class based on some specifications that's outlined by them. They're doing this to promote themselves. Here's an example again, another example. Let's open this up. Hopefully it'll open up. Yes. Here we have the American Cultural Studies, and this gentleman, buy my book, reviews of his book, all about the author. This entire website is not geared towards giving us any kind of truth. It's totally geared towards giving us information about said author to promote him. All right. Financial, which might be connected to self-promotion. An individual or company creates a website to advertise a product or service. Receiving tax tips from a website designed and maintained by H&R Block that does tax returns would be an example. They have a financial stake in it. And you have to look for that. Who's the sponsor? Who is paying for? Who is building a website? Who is writing an article? If they have a financial stake in what you think, there could be some financial bias. They might not be giving you all of the information, and that's really, really important. Money controls a lot of what happens in this country in many ways, and so you have to look out for financial bias. Drug companies financing drug trials in medical journals would be another great example of this, because obviously they have a financial stake in what happens in these drug trials, so you have to be wary of that. The last one is sponsorship. An individual or company supports a website. They don't build it, they don't own it, but they give money or a service with the intention of gaining exposure. So, gaining interview and resume writing tips from a website sponsored by the employment firm of Kelly and Manpower Temporary Services. If they're sponsoring it, they might not be the ones that build it. They might not be the ones that produce it. But if they are sponsoring, giving money, again, you might feel, as the person that's creating the website, that's giving out the information, a certain bias to not alienate the person giving you money, your benefactor, and so you might not give out all of the information, which would be hard on the person that's doing the research, because then they're not getting maybe the whole story. So we have financial, we have sponsor, we have political, and we have self-promoters, and those are the four that you really need to be looking for as you do your research and try to avoid those.